Welcome to the Education Marketing Leader podcast with Chris Raposo. If you're looking to dive into the latest industry insights, draw inspiration from education success stories, or just want to sharpen your marketing skills, you're in the right place. Here, we bring you a diverse range of voices from experts and leaders in the field, offering you a unique blend of professional development and practical strategies. Whether you want to understand your audience better, stay updated with the latest tech trends in marketing, or expand your professional network, we've got you covered. So while you're driving on your morning commute or winding down after a busy day, let's explore the dynamic world of education marketing together.
Book of the month is The Go Giver, a little story about powerful business ideas. So this book was sent to me by somebody through a LinkedIn connection. So I had, a couple of years ago, I built up my network, and then Bart Kayla introduced me to somebody, and this particular person, after meeting them one time, they asked me for my address, and I just gave it to them, and then he gave me this book, which was a nice surprise. And I I read it, and I was like, oh my gosh, I love this book. It's a really feel-good book, good principles in there, good for business, and I figured why not have it as the final book for the December Education Marketing Book Club meeting about the author. So Bob's going to join us in 30 minutes. 30, he said he would be there. So, and he's been actively engaging with all the posts that I tagged him in. So he'll be there for sure. But we know each other all, but if you wanted to give a quick intro, a little bit of a title, the organization that you work for, and most importantly, how you spent your week last week. Some of you may have been off, or maybe a little bit of a slower week. So Jill, let us know what you did.
All right, perfect. I'm Jill Whitaker. I'm the Director of Web Services at Southern Utah University. And we just had a little low-key Thanksgiving at home. I have a small family. It's just my husband, me, my 13-year-old daughter, and my dad came to visit us. And so we had 4 of us for Thanksgiving and had just a little turkey and, traditional sides, and hung out at home. Way too much football. My husband would say probably not enough football. He can watch 4 games up on the screen at once and cover them all. And I'm sitting there, they're still going on. Can't we go on a hike or do something different? But yeah, just low-key, nice family time.
Very good. Very good. Football is great. Yeah, we had a Thanksgiving meal in Germany. My aunt made it for my family. There's no Thanksgiving, obviously, celebrate in Germany, but we did it. So it was good. Nicole, how about you?
Yeah, thanks. My name is Nicole. I work with Capture Higher Ed. I'm in their Executive Director of Enrollment Solutions. I spent my Thanksgiving with my husband and my 2 children as well. We had a couple Thanksgivings with my parents and his parents as well. I'm sure if Jeff was on here, Jeff Ebbing, he would notice this or at least make this comment. On Black Friday, we were notified of a huge, massive snowstorm that was going to hit us. So in about 18 hours, we were hit with 12 inches of snow. So we had to pivot a couple of our Thanksgiving celebrations and move them up sooner, get turkeys in the oven and thawing faster than originally planned for our second Thanksgiving. Some people were disappointed, some people were sad, but I like to think we were all together, and at least we got to get together versus having to cancel completely for the snow. So that's how I spent my time. And of course, my children were outside in the snow during Thanksgiving, building a snowman, because I have 2 daughters and are Frozen obsessed. So I can't wait to see what the holiday season brings.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, I heard about the Midwest getting snowed in. So I love snow, but I don't know if I'd like to get that much snow. We don't get that much snow in the Atlanta area. Kathy?
Hi, everybody. I'm Kathy Kassane. I live right outside of Philadelphia. We get much less snow than we have back in the earlier days. But I work at Thomas Jefferson University. I'm the Associate Vice President of Marketing, at least for a couple more days, because I'm transitioning actually into starting my own coaching business. Hence a lot of those posts that you see, Chris, up there. So if anyone's interested in a coach, come find me. But yeah, for Thanksgiving, I grew up in New Jersey, central New Jersey. So we went up to my parents, and I have lots of siblings and lots of nieces and nephews. So we went up and spent the time with them, and it was just amazing. And I have 2 older sons. One now lives out in California, and the other one is home with me, and both in their 20s. So starting to make that change, excuse me, into my next chapter, which is really exciting. But I've been in higher ed for over 30 years. So and work with Capture for some of that too, Nicole.
Awesome. Well, congratulations on the new move. It's always exciting to
Yeah.
go out into the unknown. That'll help
Mhm.
you. This book may help you with that, you
Yeah,
know?
yeah. It's right up my alley.
Absolutely. Well, congratulations. We'll be following you and cheering you on the side. And be sure to join us in the book club meeting to, get the word out as well. But
Great. Thanks.
yep. Ruffy.
Yes. First of all, Nicole, Kathy, nice to meet you. My name is Rafi Dursimonian. I'm VP Chief Strategy Officer at ERI. Um, and I have a 2 and a 4-year-old daughter. So Nicole, my Spotify Wrapped is mostly Frozen, and some Annie sprinkled in there. Uh, anyway, but so I can totally relate to you there. For Thanksgiving, it was a really awesome week. We spent a few days up at Sugarloaf, USA, and they only had a couple of lifts open, but we basically had the whole mountain to ourselves. It was incredible. And I got a couple of days to do some strategic planning for the year, which is a rare opportunity. And then we drove to my mother-in-law's in upstate New York for the big day, which, 6 hours in a car with a 2 and a 4-year-old is always a lot of fun. So, um, but yeah, it was lots of wonderful Thanksgiving, so much to be grateful for this year. And I felt the selection of the Go Giver was just so on point. And speaking of on point, Chris, your chapeau and scarf combo and the Germany photo, very nice, very nice.
Thank you. Yes, yes. I bought it last year at a Christmas market in my hometown 2 years ago. So I figured I'd bring it out again around for this season. But Julie.
Yep. Hey, everybody. I'm Julie Navarra. I'm a freelance content strategist and content creator, and I work with higher ed and submission-driven organizations and those kind of folks as well. But yeah, for Thanksgiving, we had a little bit of a quieter Thanksgiving. I have stepdaughters that are in their 20s, so they don't always come home for those kind of things at this point. And but my mom came over and one of my brothers, and so the rest of the weekend we were able to spend some time with friends and that kind of thing, and get our house Christmas ready. So it was all good and a nice time. So anyway, I'm so excited to talk about the Go Giver with you guys today.
Awesome. Yeah, yeah. I heard you told me that in your family, Bob Burg and the Go Giver, it's a big deal. So really appreciate you being there and sharing your insights today. And Pablo, I don't know if you probably aren't going to celebrate Thanksgiving, but tell us a bit about what's going on in Chile.
Hi, everybody. Thank you very much for this session. As Christopher told you, I live in Santiago, Chile. I work at the University of Santiago, a public university, and I work specifically for the Vice Presidency of Research and Development. I head of communication of this Vice Presidency, and I focus my work in scientific outreach to convey a scientific project to society. Yes, we don't celebrate Thanksgiving in Chile, but I was aware of this celebration. Indeed, I really like to have this experience in the future to celebrate Thanksgiving. We don't celebrate yet, and I said yet because I remember that 15 years ago, we didn't celebrate here in Chile Halloween, but today we celebrate Halloween. So this is very, very funny celebration. So maybe in the future, I would like to travel to United States to see by my own how you celebrate Thanksgiving. I think it's a very interesting celebration.
Yeah, no, it is great. Yes.
And I watch a football match, the special football match by ESPN. So I was aware that it was a football match because of Thanksgiving, I think.
Yeah. Definitely. It's a tradition. Two football games, now three. But
Okay.
yeah, it's always something. Yeah, I love Thanksgiving too, and I wasn't familiar with it as well when I moved to the United States, coming from Germany. But it's great. Kind of like Christmas without the gifts, just people getting together, eating, and having a good time. Low pressure, lots of food, and yeah, it's great.
Yeah, nice. So if somebody wants to invite me in the future to celebrate,
Yes,
Come
on
on
over.
out.
Come on out. You can do the tour. You stop at every state.
I
We'll
was
have
gonna
to
say, I'm
have
pretty
like
sure all of us.
regional.
I
Yes.
say we all have expandable
Yeah.
tables. That's what Thanksgiving's for. You just to keep expanding the table for extra chairs.
That's
Come
right.
on over.
That's
Well, and I
right.
would think
Excellent.
regionally around the US, people might have some slightly different entrees. So Pablo needs to come for like several years in a row and tour the whole US.
That's right.
Yes, absolutely.
That is exactly right. So yeah, Atlanta is a good hub. I'm sure they fly from Santiago to Atlanta. So I'm here if you need me.
Yes.
Hop on by, my friend. But yeah, book discussion. So the really nice thing about this book was that it gave us some discussion questions at the end as well as a Q&A. So I didn't read the Q&A, but I read the discussion questions, and I figured, like we always do, you can't give your key takeaways about the book, obviously, what you felt, what stood out, but here are just a couple of questions to help you get started with the discussion. Again, like I said, the book The Go Giver was given to me as a gift, and it helped me tremendously in my career growth as I transitioned into higher education marketing, and just having the guts to go out there and ask people, for their time to share some of their insights. And I thought question 2 was really fitting, where Joe is surprised how willing successful people are to share. And I just wanted to ask you all if you've seen that and how you would approach someone you want to learn from. So I can start out. So I've seen it personally. When I started 3 years ago, people like Bart Kaler was one of the first people I've ever met in higher education. And he's like the connector guy that they talk about in the book, just getting you into with the right people. And you just have to make it happen on your own, right? You got to be personable. You got to be moldable. You got to be humble about things that you don't know, and just willing to ask the right question, and then be there to take the baton and run with it. So I'm wanted to see how some of you all have come across people like that have helped you, even though you thought, hey, maybe they're a little bit too far out, maybe I don't want to bother them. But have you experienced something like that in your personal lives?
Well, I'll just make a quick comment about that. I mean, I've worked in higher ed for about 25 years full time now. And so I've been through a lot of different administrations and different higher level president, provosts, VPs. And there's the people that, you can tell they don't really know anybody's names. And so if they see you walking around campus, it's like, hey, it's like, I kind of vaguely recognize you. But then there are the people that, will look at you and it's like, how are you? How is this certain thing going? What's happening with you? And it feels so warm and welcoming to everybody. But it's also, I've seen some of those people that were starting out as like a director level position, and then you see them advance up through higher level leadership. And you're like, yeah, because it just feels right, because they care about everybody and they somehow have that time to even recall certain facts and just point it out and bring it up with somebody, and not just be like, I'm too busy on my way to meetings. I'm not going to stop and talk to you. And it makes for a much more warm, working environment.
I was thinking about the first question, for example. And in Chile and in Latin America overall, it's not common to have easy access to highly successful people, for example. I think it's a cultural problem. Many successful people tend to be more, I don't know, reserved, busy, or less open about sharing their information, their knowledge. So I think that Joe's experience meeting Pindar effortlessly feels a little bit almost unrealistic in my context. But even if access isn't easy, I have learned that even though that approaching people with honestly, humility, and and with an intention to learn can open doors, even when those doors seem closed. I think with this approach, it's possible to connect with successful people. I have found that when people see that and see my interest is not transactional, for example, and I want to learn from them, they become much more willing to share their knowledge. So it's something that I try to practice every day, but this that experience isn't typical in Latin America. I don't know if in the United States it's usual that you can have access to easy to this kind of people.
It's something you can bring up to Bob as well when he comes in for the Q&A, and ask him if he's experienced it in other cultures, or if it's just specifically for the United States, or if there's certain cultures that are different than others. But I want to commend you for coming to this book club all the time, because now you don't have to be in Santiago anymore to make these connections. You can be on LinkedIn like you are and just connect with different people that you're interested in and pick their brain from our culture, who are more open to sharing. So kudos to you for showing up every month.
And we get that from Pablo. I think that it's nice to get a perspective from another country. So I wanted to make sure it was reciprocal.
I was going to say that is interesting to hear, Pablo. And in my experience, it is common. Like it's find your sponsors, find your mentors, things like that, so that you can learn from people. And I know, now that I'm in my reflection mode of my career, my first mentor was the woman who hired me many years ago, and she was one of the first people I reached out to tell her that I was making this move. And she's way across the country now in her 80s, but she's still like, tell me more. So like there's connections that we've kept for many, many years. And I would say, when I look at this question, how would you approach someone that you want to learn from? I think it's coming almost from this book of like, how can I help you? I think it's a lot of things like, what are you looking to kind of offload in some ways, I think is a really great way to learn from someone. And a lot of times what I'll say to like my nieces and nephews is just ask, because people that have been in careers for a long time, like one of the most complimentary thing is for you to say, I'd love to learn from you. They tend to want to be able to teach. It's been in my experience. So just saying that, I admire what you do and I'd love to learn from you. And from having a mentor, having really a lot of really great mentors in my career, that's something that is huge for me. Like I used to work with tons of undergrad students, and being able to keep those connections like way into their, second, third careers is, I think, something that has made my job so valuable to me. So.
Yeah, Kathy, I completely agree with you on the power of mentorship. When I think about what has shaped my career, I can point to a few individuals that I've really looked up to. And there's a saying in fundraising, if you want resources, ask for advice. And I feel like that is kind of the highest form of contribution. People feel like they're not just being hit up for their financial, offerings, but also for their wisdom. And there's something really profound about that. Chris, I don't know if you remember this, but you mentioned that connection put this book on your radar, but you shared this book with me in a very similar way after we met at AMA in Chicago. And it inspired me to write a book report on it that I'll share with this group after. But so, I got to reintroduce myself to this book. I listened to it this time as opposed to reading it. And, a lot of the same themes felt just so on point. One of them being this notion of, it is in giving that we receive, and just how that ties into so much of what we do, giving without a preconceived notion of getting in return. And Jill, I love what you were saying about observing your colleagues who work their way up their ranks. And I think that there's kind of an X factor there, right? There's no AI tool that can do that for anyone. It's just about having genuine interest and connection. And Pablo, I agree. There's something kind of unlikely about the scenario, right? About the whole thing. but that's kind of what makes it, I thought, a magical read in the sense that there's like a fantasy component to it. Yet the message I felt was very concrete. Each one of those lessons felt like very applicable and easy to embed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So thank you, Chris.
Yeah, I remember that. I remember that encounter because it was shortly after I received the book myself that I read it, and I hit it off with you at AMA in Chicago in 2023, and I was like, this guy seems like the guy who would follow these principles as well. So I sent it to you. So yeah, I appreciate you being here today. Share
Yeah.
it. But Julie, give us your input there a little bit. I want to hear some more from you.
Well, I was just thinking something that Kathy said reminded me of a long time ago. Someone gave me the advice to give an opportunity for people to say no. So don't be afraid to ask. If they say no, it's okay, kind of thing. And so I think the connections that we have on LinkedIn and the way the world is connected now, also, even in our culture, it helps us to approach people more readily than I think we would have maybe a number of years ago. So I think it's a lot easier these days. And I like what Pablo said about really coming in as a learner. And just, I think that was very evident in the book too, that he was there as a learner. So I like just taking that approach always.
I would kind of mirror what everybody else has said, but as I'm thinking about this and even just thinking about your question earlier, Chris, about how do you spend your Thanksgiving, I was one of those people doing the consumerism thing on Black Friday, shopping with my dad and sister like I do every year. And it was unreal to me the fast-paced level people were moving at with the lack of care and understanding that you were given to people that you thought were below you, or like those retail workers, and they're giving 5 minutes to talk to somebody to say, how was your day? Thank you so much for being here. If you weren't here, I wouldn't be able to be a part of this insanity. So I think what I loved about this book in all of it was it wasn't just how you could move yourself up to talk to successful people, but how you could be just a better human in the outlook that you have and just taking a break to slow down. We're all moving so quickly and so fast. We don't know what's going on behind closed doors. We don't know what the fight people are fighting. And so just being seen and learning about what's going on in the world, I think is an important thing. So I think this was, to Rafi's point, a really great book for the time of year, to kind of think about all the principles that you can relate in all aspects of your life.
Absolutely. Yeah, really good point. And it gives you time to reflect again, because we get so busy that we don't even intentionally just, don't we want to worry about the other person, but sometimes we're so in our own race that we forget, like you said, other people are struggling with certain things that will never come to the forefront, and just to take a moment to reflect and step back and see how we can help somebody else, without expecting anything in return. So yeah,
Law of authenticity, I believe, was the fourth law. I think that's a great component of this.
one of the ones that I really like was the restaurateur Ernesto, where he explains the difference between bad, good, and a great business, and what's a great business when and how could you apply that mindset at your school or your workplace. So, but I want to go through this because it was on page 22 where he explains it. He says, a bad restaurant, Ernesto went on, tries to give just enough food and service, both in quantity and quality, to justify the money it takes from the customer. A good restaurant strives to give the most quantity and quality for the money it takes, but a great restaurant strives to defy imagination. Its goal is to provide a higher quality of food and service than any amount of money could possibly pay for. I was thinking about that myself. How can I offer that to my audiences, to my internal stakeholders? So I'm thinking about that when it comes to my own job, right? So obviously we service higher education marketing, marketers, universities, colleges, as well as healthcare institutions, but then also my internal stakeholders is me as being an employee. I feel like the people that I work with sometimes could be my customers as well, like my boss and my colleagues. And how can I give more, way more than they ever could imagine when they hired me, right? Because you got the job description, you're like, okay, you got to hit these different bullet points, but I always try to do a little bit more than they pay me for. But how can I really exceed that expectation where they say, oh my gosh, this was the best hire that we've ever, had in our company. So this is always the mindset that I have. And I just wanted to ask you guys about that, how how you've experienced it, how you could apply it to your job. But before we go into that, I want to welcome Bob to the book club. Bob, thank you so much for taking the time.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you for having me. And thank you all for reading the book.
Absolutely. We had lots of great feedback here already about you, and really everybody appreciates it. I had a little bit of about the author introduction, about you being a keynote speaker, sales and influence expert, leadership mentor, and author. Is anything else that I missed on there you want to share with us?
No, I think that was over and above. So thank you.
You bet, you bet. So yeah, guys, everybody, if you have any questions for Bob or just want to hone in on some of the other questions here, on the mindset or how you go about, separate, rising above the just being good to being great in your jobs or for your clients. If you have some examples there you want to share, please do so. Yeah. All right.
Perfect.
For your business owner, tell me a little bit about that, how you go above and beyond.
Well, similar to the restaurant analogy in the book, we have a saying at ERI about delivering extra French fries, as in, we try to under-promise. It's one way to over-deliver, right? Everybody loves French fries. So that's kind of one of our North Stars. But Bob, I want to thank you for joining. Also, everyone on this call, we have a common thread, which is that we work within the field of higher education. And it occurs to me that the book transpires in a corporate environment, and understanding that a lot of the same core principles apply. I'm wondering if you could just speak a little bit to the differences between the two, and maybe some of the themes that are most applicable to both.
So in what ways would you say that in terms of being in higher education, what are some of the different jobs and positions you have that will allow me to kind of...
Yeah, sure. Well, I think everyone here, we're all involved in the marketing, the recruitment piece of it. So the kind of the front end. I don't think anyone here is on faculty or serving in any of those types of administrative roles. Yeah.
So in that case, it's pretty much the same as anything else. You're in sales. And it's interesting because whenever I speak to a nonprofit, or I speak to military recruiters, or I speak to that, we're all in sales. We just need to kind of be able to see what does sales really mean. And it always comes down to the same thing, because a lot of people say, well, but I don't like sales. I could never sell. Right. And it's not, I don't like it when they say this, when they say they don't like selling, it's not that they don't like selling. It's what they don't like what they think selling is. Right. Because so many of us, we've grown up that what's sales? Selling is trying to convince somebody to buy something they don't want or need. Well, of course, and by the way, that's actually not selling. That's called being a con artist. Which, of course, none of us want to be, right? So if we think that's what selling is, of course we wouldn't want to sell. So let's redefine it and let's reframe the whole concept to what selling really is. It's simply discovering what the other person needs, wants, or desires and helping them to get it, right? And that's why we say when you're selling the go-giver way, you're basically taking the focus off of yourself, which is law number 3, right? The law of influence, placing the other person's interest first, and determining what are their needs, what are their wants, what are their desires, what are their challenges that you, through your great product or service, right, can help them to accomplish. How do you move them closer to happiness? The old, and John and I talk about this in the follow-up to the Go-Giver. Go-Givers sell more. It's the only one in the series. It's not a parable. It's more of an application guide to the Go-Giver. And we say, the old English root of the word sell was selan, which meant to give. So when you're selling, you're literally giving. Now, someone might say, well, wait a second, isn't that just kind of semantics? And I don't think so. And the reason why is because let's say you are in a sales conversation with someone who might attend the school that you're promoting, that you're selling for. You're in a sales conversation, you're selling. Well, if you're selling, what are you giving? I suggest you're giving that person time, attention, counsel, education, empathy, and ultimately extraordinary value. So when we see selling from that frame, right, from that foundational premise, hey, we know we're doing something that's very righteous, something that's very good.
I think something that's kind of interesting is it starts off at the beginning of the book with Joe worried about landing the big kahuna clients and stuff. And kind of toward the end, we have that too. But as you go through the whole parable format, you're recognizing that the big kahunas can seem like small fish. They can be all around you. And I think that we have that in higher ed too. We might think, oh, the big kahuna recruits are the ones that were the star athletes, the student body president that do all the things in the high school, and then they're going to come here and be a rock star. But maybe it was that super quiet student who didn't talk to anybody in their high school. They were really shy. And then recruiting them into a higher ed environment, then that encourages them to just flourish and they do exceptional things. So I think that it was kind of interesting how the big kahuna can also be the small fish. You know, it's just important to remember that everybody around has some kind of importance and you don't need to necessarily weight it by what you can see.
Oh, I love that. And as you know, Pindar told Joe, often things are not what they seem to be.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, I absolutely love that. And when you take it, from that attitude, what happens, Jill, is you're a lot more interested in that person. You're
Yeah.
not making assumptions about that person and who they are and what their potential happens to be, right? And it might be the student athletic straight A person. It is a great recruit. There's nothing wrong with that either. But it also means that you're not just making assumptions on face value. You're really taking a deep interest in that other person, and that's when you find those big kahunas that seem like small kahunas.
And you can listen more deeply and gather more information and build
Absolutely,
a greater connection that way.
absolutely, right on.
It reminds me of that quote, and I think you might have been touching on this, Bob, was it's more important to be interested than interesting. And another quote, because I have tons of them, I think it's Maya Angelou, but it reminded me of that whole people remember, they don't remember what you said, but remember how they make you feel.
How you made them feel. Sure, that's what it's all about when you think about
Yeah,
it. Ultimately, that's what it comes down to.
yeah.
And when we can make someone feel good about themselves, and do that from a truly authentic place, that's when people also feel good about us, right? It's that old saying, were you ever in a conversation with someone who let you do all the talking about yourself? Didn't you come away from that conversation saying to yourself, wow, what a fascinating conversationalist that person is, right? And that's human nature. I always say when I first started in sales, and this is 40 years ago, and I was on the telephone a lot. And, one thing I learned very quickly is nobody ever hung up the phone on me while they were talking.
Yeah, I like that example, like how you make them feel. And sometimes you have to feel foolish to make somebody else feel good, like when Joe served coffee to the team.
Mhm.
And it's very hard to get over yourself, I think, first of all, because especially when you're in a workplace that you've been in for a while and people have a particular perception of you as like the go-getter, you're looking out for yourself, and then all of a sudden you have a change of heart, to overcome and then feel like, why is this person serving me coffee? Because in my mind, they're like, okay, I want to be a good guy, but maybe they think like I want something from them because I'm doing that, right? How do you overcome that is my question. Like that self-doubt, that narrative you have in your head that keeps you from trying to do good things.
Yeah, well, so you're right. It's a narrative in your own head, and it's also right now a narrative in their head because that's maybe what they've seen, if that's who you've been to this point. Okay. So it's really, it's not a matter of announcing, hey, I'm a changed person, but it's a matter of just doing things in a different way.
Yeah.
And when you do that consistently over time, you build that trust. And, one thing I just want to suggest, if I may, is, we actually love go-getters if you define a go-getter as a person of action. right? And so, so I think in that, what we would rather say is the opposite of a go giver is not a go getter. Opposite of a go giver is a go taker. And that's that person who feels almost, entitled, if you will, to take without having added value to the person, to the process, to the situation. So we say, be a go-getter, person of action. Just like, remember, Pindar had Joe take action on all 5 of those days. That was key. So be a go-getter, person of action, and a go-giver, someone who is absolutely laser focused on bringing immense value to others. The 2 of those is a great combination. Be a go-getter and a go-giver. Just don't be a go-taker.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And sometimes giving doesn't necessarily mean you're giving advice. Like when Joe went home and his wife wanted to talk about her day and how bad it was, but they had this win-win situation. Like, you take 30 minutes and then I take 30 minutes. But he let her keep talking and talking and talking, right? And then he wakes up the next morning, he's like, oh my gosh, I forgot the assignment. But he actually gave it to
Exactly.
It's one of those things, you're like, sometimes you just got to stand there, especially as a guy who's trying to be a fixer. Just sometimes you just listen.
Oh, that's something I've had to learn in my life far too often, and yeah, it's true. And what it really says is value is always in the eyes of the beholder, right? Because for Susan, the value wasn't his advice. The value was him just listening to her.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And, so when we talk about the law of value, value is different from price. Price is a dollar figure. It's a dollar amount. It's finite. It simply is what it is. Value is the relative worth or desirability of a thing, of something, to the end user or beholder. In other words, what is it about this thing, this product, service, concept, idea, education, the environment of the school, everything about it that they are going to, right, be able to take away from that is of such high worth, of such value, that they feel great about exchanging their tuition, their fee for this, for what they receive. And of course, you and the school make a very healthy profit. And really, in any market-based exchange, that's how it should always be. There are always 2 profits: the buyer profits and the seller profits, because each of them come away better off afterwards than they were beforehand. That's why it's so important that the value exceed the price.
And I think that's something that higher ed is reckoning with a lot right now, is reminding people of the value of this education.
Absolutely.
So many people are fixated on the price, and we've got to try to figure out all of the ways that we can transparently share the price. This is what you're going to pay, but you're going to get so much more value than this basic dollar amount.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. That is it. Remember, a very basic economic law is that people will exchange their money for that which they feel is of greater value than the money they're exchanging it for. And so it's incumbent upon us to be able to communicate that value. Now, the paradox is, we don't communicate it by telling them. We communicate it by asking the right questions in order to determine what they need, want, and desire. And only when we understand that, and assuming that it is a legitimately good fit, now we can share the benefits of our product, if you will, right, in such a way that matches with their needs, wants, and desires.
Pablo, you want to ask your question about the connection of different cultures?
Hi, Pablo.
Yes. Hi, Bob. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you.
Pablo Mora. I live in Santiago, in Chile. So this make me feel, when I read this book, very interesting ideas. How do you see the go-giver principles applying in cultural contexts where access to mentor is not too simple?
Got it. Thank you. Great question. So first, cultures are different. Cultures are different everywhere. And I think cultural differences need to be respected. And at the same time, knowing that as human beings, we have a lot more similarities, actually, than we do differences. Now, here's the thing. You talked about, the Latin culture being one where there's more distrust. The rest of us here are all Americans, and I would say the same thing. We are at a low in trust. Every study that's been done, and I'm trying to think of the one. And I can't think of the name of it, but it's a yearly survey that measures trust. And Stephen M.R. Covey, son of Dr. Covey from Seven Habits of Highly Effective People, he wrote a wonderful book called The Speed of Trust. Stephen M.R. Covey. And he talked about, and he was going through the trust is at an all-time low. But you know what? There's always been distrust because people are human. And humans generally don't trust each other unless there's a reason for it. I'm not saying that's right or wrong, but we're dealing in reality, right? And that's why I remember what you heard in Law 3 in The Go-Giver. And I talked about this 30 years ago in my first book, Endless Referrals. What we call the golden rule of business, of sales, and that is all things being equal, people will do business with and refer business to those people they know, like, and trust. But understand, trust is something that's built. It is not an automatic. Here's the good news. In a low trust society, which we certainly have in the U.S. right now, and I'm assuming you have it, where you are because you said it. And if you say it, I believe it. Okay. The good news is, in a low trust society, you have a great opportunity to be the one that builds that trust, right? Because you understand it's an issue, and you understand, and then it's learning how to do that in a way, and of course, the way we do it is by focusing on the needs of others, and that's what, and being a person of our word. And being consistent in our actions. And we develop that reputation of trust. Okay, now let's talk about ease to meeting high-powered mentors. Again, I'm going to say the same thing. It's not very easy here either. Try to get an appointment with Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos. It's not going to happen, probably, okay? And with many people, it wouldn't be with Pindar. But if you remember, Joe happened to be working with somebody, a very successful person, who saw something in Joe that was positive. And he introduced him to Pindar. Joe wouldn't have gotten that on his own. It wasn't like Joe could have just called and said, no, Gus paved the way for Joe. Now, you might say maybe that was luck, and it was to a certain point, but it was also because Joe, despite being a go-taker, he was at the time both a go-getter, person of action, but he was also a go-taker, if you remember, at the beginning, okay? And yet, Gus saw something in him. And remember what Gus told him near the end of the book? He said, I always have a way of picking the right horses. He saw something in Joe. Right. So please understand that, no, it's very difficult to meet. But what you do is you create relationships with people and you work your way up to meeting the people that you want to meet. So is it difficult to meet big kahunas like that? Sure. Is it impossible? Absolutely not. But you do it by creating relationships with people along the way. So yes, cultures always have to be, but remember, it's in 30 languages, right? And every one of these 30 languages comes from a different culture, and they're all different. And we're all human. So we all, also have those same basic, needs and so forth. So I hope this was helpful.
Thank you very much, Bob.
Thank you, Pablo.
And you never know who has those connections, right? Like you said, Jill, we always want to try to get big kahuna, but sometimes somebody that may not look like the type of person who may have those connections may have them, and that's why you want to be kind to everybody. And like we said in the book at the beginning, they didn't even know what Gus did or why he was still in that office. Somebody,
right?
So you never know. So definitely great insights there. Anybody else have any questions for Bob? We got a couple more minutes. He's here right now, guys. We may never have access to him again, so
you can always write. That's never an issue, but thank you. I appreciate that.
Bob, I'm curious if you could speak to how this book has impacted your life. I can imagine it's taken you down some pretty interesting pathways.
Yeah, it kind of took my speaking career to a whole new level. I'd had a fairly successful speaking career based on my book Endless Referrals, and it had been a fun and rewarding career. But yeah, the success of The Go-Giver kind of took it to a whole new level. I do want to say my co-author, John David Mann, is really the guy who made this happen. I mean, I'm a how-to author, right? I'm step one, step two, step three. I'm actually a fairly boring person. And certainly not a storyteller, and I can tell a story from stage, but it's always, something that happened and I can just share the story. John is the writer. So he really made this book sing. So without him doing that, it wouldn't have been the hit that it was.
Amazing. Amazing.
Thank you.
And can I ask along similar lines, like what led to you guys maybe both together putting it in the format of 5 laws? Like, was that just kind of trial and error as you were learning sales, or how did that all happen?
Well, back when I wrote Endless Referrals, and Endless Referrals was basically a how-to book for entrepreneurs and salespeople who they knew they had a great product or service and knew that it added great value to their customers, but they didn't necessarily feel comfortable or confident going out into their local communities and developing the kinds of relationships with people that would result in the know, like, and trust relationships, and having people wanting to do business with them directly and or refer them to others. So it was a guidebook. It was the how-to. When Pablo, when we were talking about doing the things to build the trust, Endless Referrals was sort of that how-to. Right, in terms of how to do that. It was a step-by-step type of thing. So, but I'd always thought, wouldn't it be great to take the basic premise of The Go-Giver, of Endless Referrals, and turn it into a parable? Because I'd always loved reading parables since I'd been in sales. Parables are stories, right? And I think we all know stories tend to connect on a deeper, more heart-to-heart level, right, than a how-to book. But again, I'm not a parable writer. So I sat on the idea for a while. I toyed around with the idea, but, and I met John because he was the editor-in-chief of a magazine I was writing a monthly column for, and John was the editor-in-chief. And even back then, he didn't have the profile than he has now. Now he's I think he's got like 50 books out there that he's co-authored, tons of New York Times books. He's written novels. The guy's amazing. But anyway, back then, few people knew who he was. Fortunately, I was one of them who did, right? And so, and he was a guy of such high integrity. He was the only one that I wanted to even do this with. And so I asked him about it. And, if I told him I had this little idea, the title being The Go-Giver, meaning, you build relationships through giving value to others and blah, blah, blah. But I really had nothing. So he said to back then his fiance, now his wife, Anna, but back then fiance, he said, I really don't have time to do this, but, it's Bob. How can I not at least, listen to his idea? Which, again, goes to the relationship, right? When you get that relationship with someone, at least you're going to get a hearing, right? So John and Anna were visiting her mom, who lived on the west coast of Florida at the time. I'm on the East Coast. I'm in Jupiter, which is about 20 minutes north of West Palm Beach. And John and Anna took a 4-hour drive over one afternoon. We had about a 3-hour dinner at a local restaurant and just talked about what the book would be about and blah, blah, blah. And it was still another 3 weeks before he made the decision. And he called me up one day and said, Anna and I talked about it. We think this is a good idea. Let's do this. And I'm thinking, yes, because I knew John could take this and really. So here's the thing. We wrote it rather quickly. That wasn't an issue. But when our agent took it to New York to, the publishing houses, we got turned down by 24 publishing houses before the 25th one said yes. So the hard part wasn't the writing, it was the getting someone to take it on as a publisher. But that publisher has been great. I mean, they've been just such a fantastic publishing partner. The right one comes along. But it goes to show, again, it's all sales, right? It's still understanding that you can have the greatest product in the world. I'm not saying the book was, but I mean, your school's greatest product in the world, or whatever someone sells, it's a fantastic product. You still got to find an audience for it, a customer, and they need to be able to understand the value.
Very good, everybody. Like Bob said, if you have any questions for him, be sure to reach him on LinkedIn and connect with him there. Or is there another way to connect with you?
Burg.com. B-U-R-G is the best place to go. And while you're there, if you'd like, you can subscribe to my daily impact email, which now I've also got on Substack, and we're making the switch over there. So I think if you go on to that there to subscribe, I think it will take you to the Substack one. So whichever one it is. Yeah, Chris, make sure you post that picture on LinkedIn, and I'll
Do that right in the next 10 minutes. Oh, how fast I can turn around there, tag everybody. And then the other question is, I really enjoyed this book, and I know you have a lot of other books, The Go-Giver Leader, and some other
Go-Giver Influencer, Go-Giver
Yeah,
Sell More.
which one would you recommend to be the next one to read?
Well, it kind of depends what you want. So here's basically what they are. There's the Go-Giver. Go-Givers Sell More is an application guide that I think can help you in the selling process if that's something that you're interested in. The Go-Giver Leader is basically, it's another parable, and it's the basic principles, but more geared toward a leader who realizes leadership is not about him. It's about those he's serving. Then you've got the Go-Giver Influencer. This is my personal favorite one, and the reason why is it's because it's all about people skills. Right. And again, it's a parable. And then John and Anna wrote their own parable called The Go-Giver Marriage.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and they did a wonderful job. It was actually half how-to, which is Anna's, because that's Anna's area of expertise, and then half parable. And so they did a terrific job with that.
Well, we appreciate it, Bob. Really, I know your time is valuable. I want to just quickly share our next book of the month. It's going to be The Hottest Seat on Campus by NACAC CEO Angel Perez. It's available on Amazon. You can look at about the book and what it's about. It's really hot right now. It came out September 2025. Next book club meeting is on January 21st. I'll send out an invite. Other than that, I wish everybody a Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, and a Happy New Year. And we'll see you on the other side, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Chris.
Bye. Thank you.
And that's a wrap for this episode, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in to Education Marketing Leader Podcast this week. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to share it with your friends and your network. And if you ever thought about starting your own podcast, now that you listen to one and you got inspired, reach out to me via DM. We'd love to help you launch your own. We'll take care of everything for you, the scripting, the strategy, the editing, distribution. All you have to do is show up, connect with your audience, and build your personal brand. So if you're ready for it, let's chat. And for everybody else, we'll see you next time at the Education Marketing Leader Podcast. Take care, friends.